Welcome to Regeneration, a podcast about reimagining Jewish customs in a modern world. I'm Debs Weinberg.
And I'm Eileen Levinson. And we're here to help families, friends, and chosen families revive customs with authenticity, creativity, and joy.
From Shabbat candles to everyday blessings, discover how you can weave new and old practices together across the generations to bring the people you love closer. Shabbat Shalom, Eileen. It's Friday.
Shabbat Shalom, Debs. I hope by this point, folks who are joining the podcast have been listening since the beginning. But for those of you who haven't, and for those who might not remember, I spoke in the first episode about receiving a gift from my father-in-law when my husband and I were struggling to start a family. The book was called Tears of Sorrow, Seeds of Hope. It's a wonderful book because it offers a lot of different ways that women have been coping with various aspects of fertility journeys. It felt really important to weave in this book and Rabbi Nina Beth Cardin, the creator of this book, because it was so helpful at a time when I felt that I didn't have language in Jewish ritual in the way that I had experienced it before to help me through that journey.
And Eileen, if you have any thoughts about how families and particularly grandparents can be supportive, or parents of children who are struggling, how they can be supportive, I know that would be really helpful to listeners.
I think the main thing is to really try to openly listen and ask questions about what your loved one is going through, and ask maybe what would help them feel seen and held and comforted in that moment. And what they say might really surprise you. It's really important to help them feel heard. Holding space for each other in our difficult moments is one of the key purposes of ritual. And just as simple as sitting with them, telling them you're here for them and you love them without judgment or without trying to fix things that can't be fixed, that's enough in that moment. But my other advice is, a real simple advice, is to check out Nina Beth Cardin's book, where she thinks deeply about life and life cycles and the intricacies of women's experience and women's fertility, or a couple's infertility, impacts not just the individual, but the community as a whole. There are so many times when we are celebrating, whether it's our weekly rituals of Shabbat with blessing one another, or attending a big milestone or life cycle moment, there are so many times where we don't realize that there is very private pain happening for those who are not realizing the family of their dreams for a variety of reasons. And my request would be that as a community and as families, we start to become better about holding space for them, for one another, when we are celebrating a milestone moment or just in these everyday tough times.
Eileen, as a grandparent, I often think to ask my children, what do you want from me? Do you want a hug? Do you want advice? Or do you want me just to listen?
That's a perfect question.
Yeah, that's a way to really connect.
So, Debs, one of the things that I've heard so much growing up is from parents, from grandparents, when are you going to get married? When are you going to have children? And then so many of our blessings in Jewish tradition are about having children. And in fact, it's one of our earliest texts. I think it's in Genesis, to be fruitful and multiply. So there's a lot of pressure there.
Eileen, it's interesting that many of the women who actually become the matriarchs are those women who are unable to conceive. So if you think about Sarah and Rebecca and Rachel, and also Hannah, they all experience infertility. So rather than being incidental details, these narratives suggest that not being able to have children serves as a profound purpose in Jewish history.
Right. And it's like their fertility was so expected that their infertility and disrupts the expected order of life.
Yeah, it's precisely through this disruption that these women, they exercise initiative and courage, and they become partners in bringing about a new future. So I call these women agents of change. This burden of infertility actually signals a change in Jewish history. And it's, if you think about it, it's their children who become the figures who redirect Jewish history and are our major patriarchs.
So awesome to know.
So I'm thrilled that we have Rabbi Nina Beth Cardin here with us today. She'll help provide a framing for these struggles and also the language and the rituals to help us as women and couples, as family members and friends who are impacted by infertility. Rabbi Nina Beth Cardin is truly a tour de force. She's known as a leader in innovation and a trailblazer. Just so our listeners know, she is one of the first women ordained as a conservative rabbi. She's the author of several books on Jewish life cycle events and prayers and rituals. And she's also known for her activism around the environment. She's also the founding associate director of the National Center for Jewish Healing, which is based in New York. Her current interest is in matriarchs.
Even though this conversation with Nina Beth is inspired by my own experience, we move beyond that to discuss the ways in which lifting up women's personal experiences helps us all hold space for one another. So often women are focused on being the connectors for their children, for partners and friends, or even their parents, if you're part of the sandwich generation. And the intricacies of what happens with fertility and infertility lifts up that we all face illness. We all face grief and huge disappointment. And I hope this conversation helps us hold space for one another in those times.
You're going to love this conversation. Welcome, Rabbi Nina Beth Cardin.
I was born in Baltimore to a wonderful family, wonderful mother, wonderful father. I have 3 siblings. We grew up in a very Jewishly conscious home. We were culturally Jewish, we were somewhat religiously Jewish, and we were engaged in civic affairs and politics. What I remember, I guess, most and learned most when I was young was that if you had any privilege, it brought responsibility, and that your home was an embassy of the community. It was never just about you, but there was an obligation to, and a joy to participate in the broader community and to help it become the best that it could be.
Your work has just meant so much to me. First of all, as someone who I'm so passionate about helping people find their place in ritual and making ritual meaningful for them so that they can cope with whatever life brings, but also the way that you have helped locate women's voices in ritual. I was hoping you can tell us a little bit more about your journey. I was also very interested in hearing more about the first book that you translated, Out of the Depths I Call to You, where you were lifting up very personal rituals of women that were maybe outside of the canon of liturgy.
In my desire to become a rabbi, I also felt that part of my task was to sort of uncover Jewish women's voices. I was sure, I was positive that Jewish women had rituals that were not recorded in the patriarchal, texts. And it wasn't out of malice. I mean, there was no anger there. There was a sense of loss, but I'm not blaming anybody. But Often the men just weren't interested. The men might not have been around because women probably did this in communities of women. And we just didn't have the preservation of women's traditions. But we know that there were women's traditions. First of all, we have Miriam and the women taking their tambourines, on the shores of the Red Sea. That couldn't have been the first time that women, went together to celebrate. Women had rituals that they did among themselves, maybe making them up as they go, as they needed them. So taking my cue from that, going, oh, you know what? There must be all of these rituals around womanhood, around childbirth, around marriage. So I get to the Jewish Theological Seminary, and I was talking to a woman who was doing research on Italian communities, self-governing Italian communities. And I had been doing research on these Italian Jewish women's prayer books. And I found in one of these prayer books a prayer that the woman recited when she went back to synagogue after having given birth, which in and of itself was a fabulous prayer. But what my friend who was doing research in Italian, villages, Jewish villages told me, she said, oh, you know what? I just came across a law that the local Jewish leaders created about that. She said, the law was saying the only people who can accompany a postpartum woman to the synagogue while she's on her way to say this postpartum prayer are first degree relatives like the mother and then the grandmother, but you can't have more than X number of women accompanying this the postpartum woman to shul in an entourage. But the point is this: Jews lived in the ghetto. The streets were narrow. Women who went back to shul had an entourage of women accompanying them, perhaps celebrating and singing along the way, and they were clogging up the streets, and the men didn't like it, so they made a rule that there was a limit to the number of women who could accompany a postpartum woman to the shul. So what does that tell us? We would not know about that accompaniment and the singing and the celebration unless there was a man who was annoyed by it and put it in a text. Laws limiting it. But so we learned that women had all of these rituals that we've lost, right? And so when I was looking at all these books about Jewish women's prayers in the Jewish Theological Seminary Rare Book Room, which nobody had looked at, and when I mentioned to some of the faculty members that I was looking at those books, they go, oh yeah, there's probably nothing really of interest.
Not to
they were
you.
Totally dismissed. I figured, I gotta go more. So I found one of those books, which was in pristine condition, which is the one I used to translate and bring out, to the public. And it was all about women's commandments, about lighting Shabbos candles, about baking bread, and everything you wanted to know, essentially, around menstruation, sex, pregnancy, childbirth, nursing, all these wonderful prayers there.
Well, thank you for helping to rescue some of these lost traditions, these lost rituals. And it sounds like maybe some of these we can bring back. I mean, I would love to bring back the ritual of accompanying a woman at postpartum to come to a synagogue to say a prayer, to let her know that she's not alone and that, that it's a celebration of life and her life.
It would be great to do that. Some of them might need to be updated, but some of them are so poignant. There's the prayer that the woman says the first time she nurses, asks that she have plenty of milk, be given plenty of milk, that she sleep lightly so that she hears the baby when the baby cries, and that she not smother the baby as she sleeps. But I also think, by the way, that there might have been SIDS, and they didn't know that.
Mm-hmm.
And so they not only did they lose a child, which was so heartrending, but that they thought they caused it when they might not have. I mean, just that prayer, gives me the shivers every time I think about it. It is both beautiful and painful, to hear it. So yeah, there are just beautiful things that those prayers have.
When you think about, surfacing women's rituals and finding the ways that women have needed to locate themselves in Judaism, what have you noticed when somebody hasn't had a ritual or the words to mark what they're experiencing? How does it affect them psychologically or emotionally? Has there been a point where you've specifically witnessed that loss of someone not having that ritual to help them cope?
Absolutely. So let's talk about miscarriage for a second. So when I first started working on creating rituals of miscarriage, and by the way, the book, Tears of Sorrow, Seeds of Hope, was a sort of anthology of various prayers, as you know, written by people who suffered losses. So in
Mhm.
other words, it wasn't somebody sitting in a armchair and
Mhm.
deciding what to say. It was coming out of people's personal experiences. So when I started doing this was already when I was probably in my early 30s, and a woman who was 63, I remember, because I thought that was so old. A woman who was 63 came up to me and basically started crying and said, I had a miscarriage when I was young and I never got to mourn it. And I thank you for allowing me to mark it. I think that's why I remembered her age, because there I was, let's say like 33 or something. And I figured, really, really, it was so eye opening to me that 40 years, 30 years after a loss, this woman had never had closure to mourn that. So, we finally gave her some opportunity to sort of mourn the loss that she'd been carrying all those years. I can't remember what I had written exactly that caused this other one, but I was directing the Jewish Women's Resource Center in New York at the time, and I got a letter, and it said, "Thank you so much for your rituals. Uh, I just got divorced, and I used your ritual, and I sold my rings, and I gave contributions to, X, Y, and Z, embedded in a sense, inspired by, the rituals of divorce that you offered." So it's like, okay, that's amazing. And I would bet that, I would hope, I guess, that there's so many stories that I haven't heard, but that those are just the tips of the iceberg that help me understand that, yes, we do need to have these rituals for women, because otherwise there are truly critical life moments that seem to go unmarked and unnoticed, and unvalidated. And so this really helps with that marking.
So we talk a lot about permission. There's this tension between the tradition, the ancient wisdom of Judaism, and then the adaptations to make it fit your life. And a lot of our listeners, we want to have open arms to people who are just curious about Judaism. Maybe they kind of left Judaism behind for a while and are curious about coming back. Maybe they are married or in a relationship with someone Jewish. Maybe their kids married somebody Jewish. And so what makes a ritual Jewish, and how do we help people feel confident adapting it if they're brand new or feeling brand new to Jewish life?
The earliest ritual adaptations that I worked on was baby naming ceremonies, right? Because you have a bris, but you should have a baby naming ceremony for a girl, right? Well, the Sephardic community has had baby naming ceremonies for girls for centuries. The Ashkenazi community, not so much. But somehow at childbirth, when your child is born, if one parent is Jewish, never mind if both parents are Jewish, and if there's some grandparents who are Jewish, right, there seems to be an impulse to import something Jewish in the baby naming ceremony. I mean, your question is so good because we need to create something new because it doesn't exist, but we want something that is sort of, covered with the patina of tradition and the words of tradition. You want it to resonate with the ages. So how do you create something new that's resonant, with the ages? It's a little bit tough, but that's where words come in. That's where pulling words from verses of Torah and verses from Psalms and other elements of tradition. So you have markings of tradition, even though the context is something that's new. And I would say I was an anthropology major in college. And one of the things I learned was about the power of ritual. And to be frank, not everybody understands sort of the anatomy of rituals and how to create rituals and the flow of rituals. Rituals tell a story. Rituals take you over thresholds. So I don't think everybody should feel uncomfortable if they feel, well, I'm not totally equipped to create a new ritual. That's okay. It's an art. We're not all artists of the same nature. It is an art with some rules. So if you really do want to have a ritual and you're not quite sure that you are the expert to do it, go to your rabbi, go to some of these books. My goodness gracious, go online. I mean, there's just, when I was starting to do these things, there was no such thing as the internet. We could not just go online. But the resources that are online these days are amazing. We should feel that we can create rituals if they are not there for us, because the tradition was created by our patriarchs, and they didn't always have us in mind.
Ritual can provide a structure sometimes for conversations that are maybe too difficult to have in the normal routines of your daily life or the normal patterns that you fall into the child-parent relationship. And I think that sometimes just saying, okay, mom, dad, we'd love to feel more support from you on this fertility journey. And we know that you're feeling pain too, as you see us struggle. Can we just do this simple ritual that I found together? Can we read this story? This does remind me. So we were visiting my in-laws in South Jersey, and we'd had a difficult year where we thought it just wasn't going to happen. And we were going to approach some alternative means for starting a family that beyond just regular IVF. And we decided that we were going to make a little bit of lemonade together. It was a very impromptu ritual that my husband and I put together, and my in-laws were well-meaning and game, but also a little confused. And my mother-in-law grew some lemon thyme in her garden in the front of the house, and we had fresh lemon and some sugar, just kind of things that we found, and some water. And everyone just put in an ingredient into the glass or pitcher that we had. We stirred it up. I think we shared a word of hope because we were also about to fly back to England and resume whatever this next stage in the process was, and kind of say, okay, well, we're moving on from this grief that we had to now become proactive in making this happen again. It was like a simple gesture. I don't remember entirely what we said, but it felt like an opportunity where we were able to just feel like we were really on the same page. My in-laws, who we're very close with, but we didn't have, it's just so hard to talk about. And, some of it is that you don't have the words. And also, and even if they're just afraid of asking and offending us or bringing up something, I think that's very much with like our parents' generation is, well, we know it's upsetting, so we don't want to bring it up and upset you. But it's also like, well, but I do want you to bring it up and I want to talk about it.
Right.
But anyway, it was this action that we made something together. We shared a simple word, but I still remember that like, oh, okay. I feel that support a little differently.
When life gives you lemons, you make lemonade.
Yeah, I would say yes.
But there's an elasticity about ritual. So you're right, both in the sense of who can participate, and also in the varieties of meanings that people can bring to it. And you're all doing the same thing, and so you're all united there, and you can all take a piece of the meaning that is most important for you. There's a woman I know who had a miscarriage who created a 60-page long ritual to which she invited her friends. I think it was like on the full moon. And clearly, the pain, she had so much pain. She needed that kind of lengthy ritual. But it doesn't have to be that. In fact, it's better if it's not that. That's sort of overwhelming for people. There's something about a ritual that changes the space that you're in. So you can have, let's say, 5, 6 people all sitting in a space, and you're all sort of individuals gathered around sort of the common center and talking to each other. But ritual sort of changes the very air that you're in. It makes it almost thicker so that there's this bonding. So you're not just people sitting around in a common area, but that literally there's this like an ether of some sort, that connects you all, that goes from my body to your body to the next body. And it changes the atmosphere, literally the culture, the ether of the place. And so when the ritual ends and it disappears, you notice and you go, wow, that was such a special moment. So there's just the kind of ritual that you're talking about is transformative. It's short-lived. It comes and it goes, but the memory of it and the feeling that you had there remains. It is a wonderful contribution to make to someone to help them heal, and to the others who are there with them.
Can we talk about some of those rituals that come from Judaism? I mean, I'm thinking about the idea of like giving blessings and the opportunity for people to kind of go around in a circle and give blessings. There's something, and the whole idea of Tehillim, for instance. I mean, the idea of people coming together to wishing the same thing for a person for speedy recovery, or to get over a loss, or to help them through this transition. Can you give us some examples of some of the beautiful rituals that particularly help around, issues surrounding pregnancy or loss?
I would say there's no one sort of rule book or sort of anatomy of a ritual, as I call them. Some people like to do them in private, and some people like to do them, with others. So, for example, Deborah Nussbaum Cohn wrote a piece for the book on pregnancy loss about how she developed her own ritual, which was about baking challah. And it was a beautiful metaphor for something that you create. You knead into a particular shape and mold, that is creating this embryo. You put it in an oven. You put it in the womb, and it kind of bakes there, and it sits there, and you're hoping that it's good, and you see it rise, like you see the belly rise. And she molded the challah dough in a certain way that helped her mark the loss of this embryo. But that was sort of a private thing. There were others who used the garden and plants and planting, digging into the soil. And there was one in particular, a very moving, but she chose to plant perennial bushes and annual bushes. And the annual bushes represented the babies that didn't make it, right? They celebrated the beginning, celebrated the hope, celebrated the sort of the blossoming that happened in the womb, but then ended. But celebrating also with the perennials, the sense of ongoing memory, the sense of needing to have hope, right? The sense of imagining a new family and new life. So that we don't just end with an annual that just, dies. And I believe she might have done it, but planted with friends who, but I'm sure that one could invite the friends who are there to offer words of blessing about the plants and this woman who was now marking this moment of transition from a would-be mother to a not now, mother of this child, and how they move forward.
So, Nina Beth, tell us about how we meet this moment.
Two things come to mind as I think about it. Like, one is all of life is so awesome. I know it sounds so trite. I can't say it enough, and I can't say it profoundly enough. Almost every moment of life, the breaths that we take, as you say, the all these aspects of our bodies, the healing aspect of our bodies, the days that we have health. There's just moment to moment, life is just exquisite. And when it's not, when we're hurt, when we're sick, there's still something remarkable about the human body. You're right. And there's something that needs to be noted about the human body. And so those rituals that note the human body, even if it's about and around illness and healing, which a lot of these rituals are around illness and healing, it's so powerful to put it in the context of this miracle of life, which eventually will fade and fail all of us, in all of us. But nonetheless, it doesn't detract from the grand awesomeness. And so the more people are doing to mark their lives and their bodies, the more we can celebrate, especially in a time of great dislocation and upheaval, So I think that is really great. And so this is one of my pet theories about Judaism. People are often afraid about changes. Oh, so, the Sadducees didn't like the Pharisees, and the classic didn't like the Hasidim, it didn't like the Reform didn't like the Conservative. I mean, we just don't. Whatever changes there are, they were dangerous. To my mind, I trust in the Jewish people. I put my trust in the Jewish people, and no matter what difficulties we're going through, I think history will allow the Jewish people to find their way. And we have to remember, if we didn't have the rabbis at the time the temple was destroyed, we wouldn't be here. I'm sure that the priests did not appreciate the rabbis. They were developing a whole alternate way of being Jewish, especially synagogues and all. And yet, if we didn't have that additional alternate way of being Jewish, we wouldn't be here. So all of these other ways that you're describing with these young people creating different expressions of Judaism, not all of them are going to survive. Maybe most of them won't survive, but there'll be something about them that is there to carry us through to the next generation, because we have to change. We are at an inflection point in Jewish history, I think, as critical as the time when the temple was destroyed. And I think we're going to need all hands on deck to throw it all against the wall, and we'll let history decide what sticks. So I don't think we have to panic if we don't like, what's going on. And I think we can celebrate, as I say, where these traditions are filling gaps that our tradition left for us to fill.
So, for those who are seeking to have children and haven't been able to conceive, perhaps we can end on some words of wisdom?
There are extraordinary disappointments that many of us experience in life. It could be a disappointment in love. It could be a disappointment we didn't get into a school. It could be a disappointment we didn't get the professional advancement. Life is full of grand disappointments. One of the most poignant stories, it seems to me, is at the very end of Torah and Moshe. Moshe spent his entire adult life, 40 years of his life, getting the people of Israel to the land of Israel. And he couldn't go in, right? He was denied that the goal of his life, the purpose of his life. He was denied it. And
And he watched others who
And he
entered the
watched
land.
others, achieve that. Yeah. Or it's, on the precipice. He was like so close. And so what's fascinating is the Bible doesn't offer comfort for that, right? It just says, you know what? Life sometimes sucks. I mean, sometimes we just have grand disappointments. Yeah. And yeah, that's it. So is that an uplifting statement? No. Are there some times when we have disappointments we can be comforted by a hug, by company, by fixing the disappointment and ending up successful at the end? Yeah, sometimes. And sometimes we can't. And then we just have to say, you know what? Got a deal. I mean, I hate to be so harsh. There's no way to fix this. This is just, it hurts now. It'll hurt tomorrow. It'll hurt next year. Maybe it'll hurt a little bit more next year. It's like suffering a loss of a loved one. It hurts. And there's nothing you can do to take that hurt away. But what's so amazing is that the Jewish people went on. They are resilient. We are resilient. And so I think that sometimes instead of trying to offer a way to make it right, we have to offer a way to say, it hurts. Let's hold hands and go forward together.
I think that's the place we should end. Let's hold hands. Let's go forward together.
Well, thank you. This has been a lot of fun.
So thank you for listening for our conversation with Rabbi Nina Beth Cardin.
Nina Beth uses the word elasticity, and that's so important for family relationships and also how we share our rituals. Rituals can be something we share with others, and they can also bond us, and they can be transformative. But it's the people who are doing them who are the ones that are transformed, as well as the people who are witnessing and holding space with those individuals.
And I do want to mention that Rabbi Nina Beth Cardin's prayers will be found in the guidebooks that you can find on Recustom. So please make sure to look at the link in our show notes.
Debs, I'm so glad we have this space for this conversation. Thanks for sharing this space with me and really modeling how parents and hopeful grandparents can bring curiosity and care to this conversation.
Yeah, Eileen, it's interesting that you and I met, and you were at that point trying to start a family, and we've been on this journey together. So, so glad that I can be there to support you. And now to see Ben, your baby Ben, in your arms, and he's hardly a baby anymore. He's he's a toddler.
He's a toddler. Yeah,
he is a toddler. Anyway, may he go from being a toddler to someday being under the chuppah.
All right, Shabbat Shalom, Debs.
Shabbat Shalom.
This first season of Regeneration is a 10-episode journey. We invite you to join us every Friday to explore new ideas for Jewish ritual, hear from an inspiring guest, and receive tips to practice on your own. You can visit us at recustom.com/regeneration to download all of your guidebooks, see the episode list, and sign up for our newsletter so you stay up to date on everything happening with Regeneration. Regeneration is a partnership between Recustom and the Jewish Grandparents Network,
and is hosted by Eileen Levinson and Deborah Weinberg, and produced by Josh Gilbert and Kate Mishkin.
Follow the Regeneration podcast on Apple, Spotify, or wherever you listen to podcasts. We'll be back next week. See you then.